3 years ago, I sat on this sofa and told you that the United States was on a collision course to kill second citizenship and your options to have a backup plan. I said it under Joe Biden, and now I'm saying it under Donald Trump, whose new proposal could kill your ability to have second citizenship and a backup from the United States. And this all ties into Donald Trump's new travel ban. You may have read about this in the news. There's 43 countries being targeted, some of which have to do with the second citizenship industry. So I'm going to walk you through what's happening in the news. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what the U.S. government could be thinking and what actions they might take. And I'm going to tell you how you can still protect yourself, whether you're an American or not, because I do believe everybody needs a second citizenship because you do not want to be a slave to just one country. From the New York Times, draft list for new travel ban proposes Trump targets 43 countries. That's kind of a mouthful. I'm not going to share the article with you, but I am going to get right to the list. Obviously, this is a proposal. Stuff moves fast in the Trump administration, but this is Trump travel ban version 2.0. And we're going to see how this goes. So there's 3 different categories here. There's red, orange, and yellow. The first category, red, means all travel banned. You've got about 11 countries here. Most of them wouldn't surprise you too much. The Afghanistans, the Irans, the Yemens. A couple standouts. Bhutan. Not many Bhutanese people that I know. Surprising that they're on there. Pretty peaceful country. Also of interest, Venezuela. Our own Javier from Venezuela. They call him the tax terminator. Has a U.S. visa. Will that U.S. visa stay in effect? Will he be able to get another U.S. visa? Or is he just persona non grata now in the United States? Venezuelans, under this proposal, will see all travel to the United States banned. I would imagine this is some kind of diplomatic, negotiation where that could be changed under a new administration. I guess any of these countries, the administration changed, they'd open it up. So all travel banned probably doesn't affect you unless you are in Venezuela. If you're a dual citizen, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Orange, visas sharply restricted. Again, countries that you probably wouldn't be surprised by: Belarus, Eritrea, Haiti, Laos, not sure why. I guess, communist country. Myanmar, Pakistan, Russia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Turkmenistan. So if you plan on getting that new Sierra Leone citizenship program for $140,000 and giving up all your other citizenships, visas for the U.S. will be sharply restricted for you. Most people will never want to be a Sierra Leone citizen by investment, but if you thought that'd be like your 5th passport or something, keep that in mind. Now, here's what matters. The yellow, 60 days to address concerns, and I'll go into what that means in a minute. You've got, again, some suspects you might not be that surprised about. Angola, and Cameroon, and Equatorial Guinea, which the U.S. actually had a good oil relationship with. Liberia, okay, fine. But among that list are countries that offer citizenship by investment. Vanuatu, whose citizenship program is a niche one. It's interesting for some people. It could be a last resort for others. Cambodia, which has a rather obscure citizenship program as well. All but one of the Caribbean countries, so St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Dominica, and Antigua and Barbuda. The one that's not on the list is Grenada. Grenada has had an E2 visa relationship with the United States. So if you get Grenada citizenship by investment, it used to be you could just immediately go and apply for a U.S. E2 visa, let's say by starting a lawn mowing business and hiring some people. You go, show your business plan, make a contribution of capital, and an E2 national can get in. So people like from China were going and getting Grenada passports to get that E2 status, opening a business in the U.S., applying for the E2 visa. And what was cool about that was you don't have to be a U.S. taxpayer if you don't spend the requisite amount of days in the U.S. They made that harder to where now you actually have to live in Grenada after getting the citizenship to qualify. They imposed that connection requirement. But perhaps because of that E2 relationship, Grenada is not on the list. And so those countries have 60 days to address concerns of the U.S. The article says it is not clear whether people with existing visas will be exempted from the ban or if their visas will be canceled. I'll comment on that in a moment. Nor is it clear whether the administration intends to exempt existing green card holders who are already approved for lawful permanent residence. I've said for years, green card's perhaps one of the worst statuses that you can have. This is a call to action. If you've got a green card, either get out, ideally before you become a long-term green card holder, after 8 years of presence, and you have to pay exit taxes like a citizen, or naturalize and become a permanent U.S. citizen. You still could be denaturalized if they could find any errors in your application, but as long as you do things properly, you should be fine. Being a green card holder is not the level of permanence that people think it is. I wouldn't want a green card personally, but if you like the ability to live in the United States, my personal opinion, without knowing your unique situation, is most people should naturalize or get out. Green card holders are not going to be as protected as they think they are. Now, let's talk about that yellow list where the citizenship by investment countries are. 22 countries that be given 60 days to clear perceived deficiencies with the threat of being moved onto one of the other lists if they did not comply. Failing to share with the United States information about incoming travelers. Oh yeah, you didn't know that? Yeah, the US requires, for planes that want to land, for countries that want visa-free travel, they want a lot of data from those countries. Also, purportedly inadequate security practices for issuing passports. That would be targeting citizenship by investment. This idea that somehow you can go to a lot of countries, including countries that have visa-free access to the United States, and the naturalization process doesn't really require that many documents. But when I went through the process in St. Lucia, for example, and we help our clients get citizenship by investment all around the world, I've got to disclose literally everything I've ever done, every company, everything. And they check. And oh, by the way, they have the systems. We had one gentleman, he wasn't aware that there was a pending issue, and the government in one of these Caribbean countries knew it before he even got it. And so the fact that that is somehow, inadequate security processes for issuing passports, here's what it is. And I don't care if it's Biden, and I don't care if it's Trump. It is a legacy brand country that for my entire life has existed off of the fumes of previous generations, without really innovating, without desiring to be competitive. Now there's more competition in the world. And rather than welcoming competition as they would claim that they would, hey, we're capitalists, we welcome competition. No, they fight back and they tell little St. Lucia, little St. Kitts and Nevis, hey, you guys offer citizenship to thoroughly vetted people in exchange for donations that builds affordable housing and roads and schools. And yeah, we don't like that our citizens can get your passport. And if they wanted to, give up ours and go and live in your country tax-free. A lot more people are realizing, our clients who have $1 million in liquid assets or more, yeah, why would I want to pay taxes in the US, which get wasted at such a high level, when I can get a second passport and go and live in a tropical paradise or anywhere else they choose and potentially pay zero tax free from the interference of the US? The other issue is selling of citizenship to people from banned countries. So what I think that we'll immediately see is a lot of these Caribbean countries will go and say, okay, fine, Venezuela is on the red list. We won't sell Venezuelan citizenship. So if you're Venezuelan and you've been listening to me for years say, get your second passport, you might have missed your chance. Because I personally saw, right after the Russia-Ukraine war, Russian citizens who were opposed to their own country's government be kicked out of the queue by Caribbean citizenship programs where they had applied before those countries banned them. They just got kicked out midstream. And yet some people are still saying, well, how much worse can it get? I'll wait until it gets bad enough. You may not have the ability. The bottom line is, yeah, selling citizenship to people from banned countries. Yeah, if you're from Angola, if you're from Venezuela, if you're from Afghanistan, you might have one less option. Doesn't apply to most of our audience. But the question is, how much pressure will the U.S. government put in these countries beyond just saying, hey, don't let Iranians participate in your program? Many programs already don't allow Iranians, don't allow Afghanis, don't allow this, don't allow that. Okay, I don't think that these programs will push back that hard on that. And if you're not Belarusian or Angolan, I guess you should care about the creeping restrictions, but it doesn't impact you immediately. Let me go through the rest of my thoughts on this. If you're a U.S. citizen, presumably this isn't an issue. The one thing that I can just think off the top of my head is perhaps you wouldn't be able to get or keep trusted traveler status. I remember I went for an interview for Global Entry many, many years ago, and I got it. One of the questions they asked me is, are you a dual citizen? I got it way back in the day when I wasn't a dual citizen. So my answer was no, I got the Trusted Traveler program. I know someone who spends too much time in Asia, and the guy just said, we don't like that you're in Asia, your global entry is revoked. If they can do that, I would imagine that if they knew, oh, you're also St. Lucian, maybe they wouldn't give it to you. You'd have to go through the normal immigration line. Quite frankly, for me, one of the benefits of having a second passport is it kind of changes your mindset to where you're going to spend more time overseas. And over time, you're going to realize you don't want to come back to the U.S. And when you do, you'll realize, why is everywhere else so easy to get into and this one isn't? But otherwise, U.S. citizens, you're a U.S. citizen. You can have other citizenships. If you're a green card holder, I go back to my point. My personal suggestion, I'm sure there's someone this doesn't apply to, but if it were me, I would naturalize or I would get out. If you have an existing visa, is that visa going to be canceled or not? Is the tax terminator going to be able to fly into Miami anymore? Or is it just over immediately? What we did talk about internally, and I talked to a couple of folks over the weekend about this, was there was some precedent from the Supreme Court, and I'm not going to get all the details, but that talked about, I think back in 2017 with the first Trump travel ban, that people who have already met the burden of a U.S. visa may be able to keep that. So this may not be a total panic, but certainly I wouldn't expect, if this all goes through, to be able to get a new visa if I'm from any of these countries. The other question is, if you're a dual citizen, is that okay or not? Again, who knows? This is all brand new. What we have surmised in all likelihood so far is, let's say you are a French citizen and you're saying, hey, this French government, they're talking about citizenship-based taxation. I better get a passport as a plan B, and you go and get a St. Lucia passport, that you could still likely go through the ESTA process. Over time, could the U.S. impose more questions? Hey, are you a citizen of a citizenship by investment country? They could. Now, what we've seen with the U.S. and other places is there could be a carve-out for like natural-born St. Lucians where they could be exempt from any of these requirements. What we did see, I believe it was in Palau, was that citizens of Palau have access to the U.S. And yet there's a criteria that if you were back in the 90s and they had a citizenship program for foreigners in Palau, those people who have certain passport numbers are not eligible to come. And so there's a number of different times throughout history where they've kind of carved out, are you a natural-born citizen or did you get it by investment? But if you are, in this example, French or any other citizenship holder who has access via ESTA to the United States, or presumably if you're Canadian and you've accessed at a higher level to the United States, I don't necessarily see that as being an issue right now because you have that citizenship ostensibly in most cases from birth, or at least you were naturalized into it. One of the other things that we've seen is Hungarians, due to passport irregularities. Under the Biden administration, only native-born people born in Hungary are entitled to use ESTA to come to the United States. Everybody else needs to get a visa. So even if you were born across the border in Serbia and your place of birth is Serbia, but your parents are Hungarian, or if you're of Hungarian ancestry, you have to go to the U.S. Embassy and get a visa. You're not treated as any other Hungarian, any other EU citizen. And so, I said under the Biden administration, that's retribution, that they don't like Viktor Orban. Whether you like Viktor Orban or not, they're really kind of picking and choosing sides. I continue to think that if you just go out and get Caribbean citizenship by investment, let's say renounce your U.S. citizenship, and then you want to get a visa to come back, and that's your only citizenship, that hasn't always been guaranteed to begin with. Particularly if you just live a nomadic lifestyle, you may not meet the criteria of non-immigrant intent to get a U.S. B1, B2 visa. And so now this may make it even harder. I think people getting these as a backup, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Here's other things that could happen. Those on the red list might be ineligible for a B1, B2 visa without a residence requirement. And so similar to what we saw in Grenada with the E2 visa, where they're saying, hey, if you get Grenada citizenship by investment, you can come into the E2 Treaty Trader program to get access to the U.S., but you have to fulfill some requirements of actually living there once you got the citizenship. And so it's possible one of the carve-outs here might be, yeah, we'll give you a B1, B2 visa, tourist visa to come to the United States, but you could actually live in your citizenship country, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, what have you. The good news is 3 of the 4 countries that are on the yellow list are tax-friendly. And so if you wanted to live there, you could. The other thing you could do is you could get another citizenship that wasn't on the list. That is another thing that is kind of unclear, is that when you go to the United States, whether you're applying at an embassy for a visa or whether you're filling out the ESTA, the form that you've got to fill out to come, if you have a visa exemption, is they will ask you for all your passports. And so that is a way that they could potentially judge you in the future. Again, our thought right now is if you have a passport, again, if you're French, you're probably okay. If you're American, you're probably okay. The issue is if you're just one of these citizens and you don't live there, is that going to be an issue? And so here's the bottom line. There's already ESTA restrictions on Europeans. If you are entitled to an ESTA to come to the United States, but you've been to any number of countries going back as far as 2011, you could be deemed ineligible to receive an ESTA, and you have to go to a U.S. embassy. We've had a couple of clients. We had a British client years ago. He went to Iran on a tour. He was there, therefore ineligible to get an ESTA. He had to go to the U.S. embassy. Now, he went to the embassy and they pretty quickly figured out he's not joining ISIS or whatever groups are actually in Iran. But the new one that the U.S. government has added is Cuba. And if you go back over the last, I think it's the last 2 years now, if you've been to Cuba and you're German, you're Spanish, you're French, you're Irish, whatever, people who might go to Cuba on a holiday, you are now ineligible to get an ESTA. So the U.S. already has requirements. It already has restrictions on who can come, even among their closest allies. And obviously people in those countries right now are saying to themselves, is the U.S. our ally right now? And so what I've told you for years is there may come a time when if you want to be totally free, you're going to have to choose. Do I want to be able to go to the United States, or do I want to be totally free and live in the rest of the world that's judgment-free? Again, Americans getting backup passports, I don't see an issue right now. We likely don't see an issue for Western nationalities getting these. I do certainly think if you are of a country that needs a U.S. visa and that is looked down on by the U.S., i.e. your country has a high visa rejection rate, yeah, getting a Caribbean citizenship probably isn't the best way to endear yourself to the United States right now. But my point is the U.S. that important to you? And here's the decision that I've made in my life. Whether it's entering a country, whether it's dealing with a bank, whether it's having any kind of a relationship in my life, what I've said is I'm going to hold myself to high ethical and legal standards. I'm going to do things right. And if someone still doesn't like me because they want to make a judgment about me, then you know what? I don't need that relationship. And I think that we're going to come to a time, not right now, but in the future, where it's going to be, yeah, do you want to visit the United States or do you want to have a second passport? I'm not saying, if you're French but your dad was Luxembourgish and you have both of those, yeah, I think you'll probably always be fine. But if you want to have the kind of passport diversification that we talk about, I think the U.S. could be the one country that's really going to make it difficult. And I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday from Europe. He said, I haven't been to the U.S. in 14 years. If I could never go again, I wouldn't miss out. I think that some people have a sort of ego where they just want access to everywhere. There's a handful of countries in the world that I can't go to without first getting a visa. I don't want to go to those countries anyway, so I don't feel like I'm missing out. And so this was easy for me. I was happy not to go back to the United States. Would I be happy to see my grandmother again? Yeah, that's about the only reason I would go. And you know what? She's very understanding and she supports the decisions that I've made, and we talk online all the time. But I think for everybody else, you're going to have to make a choice. And it might be, hey, if I want access to the U.S. and I want to have those extra passports, I'm either going to spend more. Let's say I'm going to go to Malta, and I'm going to get the Malta $1 million passport. Now, they can add anybody to the list at any time, but Malta right now is not on the list. Am I going to spend $1 million to get that top quality TRA passport? That's a choice that you have to make. That's the kind of choice that we walk our clients through. We walk our clients through these exact scenarios all the time. What's it worth? And I think what people need to start thinking about is, if you're not American, how important is access to the United States for me? And so people would say, well, what's the point of getting Caribbean citizenship if you can't go absolutely everywhere in the world? What you're buying is freedom. What you're buying is neutrality. What you're buying is peace. What you're buying is optionality, where the United States taxes you and regulates you no matter where you go in the world. Listen, I give Trump credit. He pulled down one of the regulations on expat business owners recently. Good for him for doing that. But the United States still follows you all around the world. If you want to live in the U.S., you play by their rules and you pay what they ask. But if you're like me and you don't want to live there, why should they keep following you around? And I think we've talked about more countries want to do that. But as more countries, France, Australia, Canada's talked about it, want to impose more restrictions on their non-resident citizens, if you want the freedom to say, you know what, I don't agree with you guys, let me go. This is where they are coming in and saying, no, we're going to impose all kinds of restrictions and say, oh, suspicious people coming in, as if every Iranian's a bad person. And even once they ban the Iranians from the program, which they already have, oh, this guy's suspicious, this, that, the other. People get naturalized in countries all around the world every day. This is about cracking down on competition. And your backup options, if you don't want to go through citizenship by investment, check your family tree for citizenship by descent, go somewhere, live there, naturalize, or go through a fast-track naturalization program where you're making a serious business contribution to a country and you can get put on a fast track. Those ways you would probably get a citizenship in a country that's not on the list. But quite frankly, I don't think you should live your life to cater endlessly to the U.S. government. Follow the law, do what's right, but if you just have a disagreement, like they don't like St. Lucia and you do, okay, you should do what you want. That's what this is about. My life is not about, should I do every single thing so the U.S. government likes me? They never cared about me in the first place. They never would have rescued me. They never would have sent the fleet. They never would have sent a helicopter to evacuate me if I got stuck somewhere. They never cared about me, and they don't care about you. It's a giant leviathan. They don't care about their citizens. And now that the citizens are realizing that, they want to shut down the exit routes. I don't think this is, again, any reason to panic. In fact, I think, quite frankly, now's the time to get second citizenship in one of these places if you want it, before it becomes even more expensive.